The only tyrannical force in this country is the Republican Party. The only fascist movement in this country is the Republican Party's MAGA movement. So let's kind of take a look at a little bit of that, and then we're going to get into a story that's a bit shocking about the Tennessee legislature attempting to expel members of the legislature due to them participating in protests, which I didn't realize was illegal now all of a sudden. But let's start from the top here.
What are you seeing at the state capitol this morning?
Well, I was at the vigil last night, Garrett, where they encouraged people to come here this morning, line the gallery of the state capitol to confront lawmakers as they're walking into their general duties of the day. Several thousand people showed up. It was organized by a mom who put it out on social media on Monday after this happened. I'm now joined by another mom, Sakayla Colbert, and her beautiful one-year-old Cadence here. She also has a 6-year-old. Why was it important for you to be here today?
As a mom, as a believer of Christ, I believe that it is the love of Christ that has called me to be here, to be a voice for the children, to prioritize their safety. I was in high school, and I wore my sweatshirt today from being in high school when Sandy Hook happened, and I remember all of the fear and the sadness and the brokenness that I felt walking through my own hallways at school the next day. And to know that here we are over 10 years later.
Jesus. Now, keep in mind, let me pause this really quickly. There are going to be people who are going to say, oh, but Josh, what about our Second Amendment rights? Why, if I want to own gun, all the rest of the stuff. I want to put that aside for a second. I want anybody who comes to me with that perspective to understand that there are this many people coming out in this community furious and upset and wanting a change in the way that their local community approaches the ownership of guns. Now, for you to say, like, what about my freedoms? I understand that. But let's keep in mind, you are asking for your freedoms, for your interest, for your small interest, your individual interest in this particular topic to outweigh the opinions of all these other people. Keep that in mind. When we talk about guns, we talk about legislation, keep in mind, you're not in the majority of this. You are arguing for a minoritarian opinion in a lot of these communities. I understand there are communities that are a lot more pro-gun. And keep in mind, Nashville is not exactly, is a rather blue city, but certainly is surrounded by incredibly conservative rural voters. So keep in mind, the larger populace is having some kind of moment here, a reckoning with the policies that until now they have been, I guess at the very least, tolerant of. But everyone's tolerant of guns, of gun policy, of the ease in which somebody can attain guns until it falls on them. I noticed that a lot, that people are pretty, uninterested in the gun debate. They're not as, I think not non-concerned, but certainly it's not top of mind for them. Until one of these shootings happens, and suddenly they come to realize, oh shit, this isn't an abstract thing that just happens. This happens in my community. This is going to happen in the next community over. And there are people who want to argue that their personal interest in shooting firearms in their backyard should outweigh all the rest of these folks. And there's an argument for rights, the affirmation of one's rights, even from a minoritarian standpoint. But I think the 2A community and those who have advocated for it need to reckon with the fact that they are not in the majority on a lot of this. A lot of the stances and a lot of the pushback to any regulation makes them honestly look unreasonable.
to be prioritized, for their safety to be prioritized. I felt a duty to be here.
Have you talked to your 6-year-old about all of this?
I can't fathom even the words. How do you explain that to a 6-year-old? How do you prepare someone who doesn't experience violence to be prepared for fighting for their life in a place that they love to be in? I can't talk to them about it. I don't know how as a mom, and I can't imagine those parents at Covenant and those people connected to those children and the conversations that they have to have with 6-year-olds, with 9-year-olds, with elementary kids, with middle schoolers. I can't.
And Sakayla's also got a sign that says graduations, not funerals. So people are asking lawmakers to do something. There are several bills, Garrett, right now going through the General Assembly that would expand gun access. So time will tell whether the show up.
You know, especially when we talk about the American citizens' influence on the laws that govern them. Imagine living in this community. You've gone through this shooting. You've seen, footage of all the other shootings that happen around the country. And your lawmakers, against your wishes, decide to enact legislation, propose legislation, that is the opposite of your value assessment. Your legislatures have decided that while you cry for more gun control and a safer approach to firearms, the people you elect to represent you have decided no, you will get less gun control and you will have more danger. This is what we talk about when we say that there is a corrupt political system. This is the result. This is the impact that it has on normal, average, not the most politically engaged voters. If you're out there and you're not super politically engaged, you're not, you go to work, you come home, you take care of your family, you try not to worry about politics and get dragged into, this debate or that debate or into uncomfortable topics. Understand that in your locality, there is a strong chance that you hold values in terms of how the society you live in should be structured, and the barriers to that polite society, that the people who represent you hold the utter opposite value system. In a time where you think that you are safe, that you live in a community that could never see any of this, you're going to get a wake-up call eventually to find out that politics and all the rest of the stuff that makes you uncomfortable is going to come to your door. All this stuff touches everybody. But keep in mind also, with that being said, Tennessee also has been moving, apparently, to expel 3 Democratic lawmakers after this protest. So who is this? Representative Justin Jones, and does it say who the other person is? No, I think that might be Savers. Nashville. Tennessee Republican lawmakers took the first steps Monday to expel the Democratic members from the GOP dominant House for their role in a recent gun control protest at the state capitol. The extraordinarily rare move resulted in a chaotic and fiery confrontation between lawmakers and supporters opposing the move, and has further fractured an already deep political division inside the Tennessee legislature. Resolutions have been filed against Representatives Gloria Johnson, Justin Jones, and Justin Pearson after they led chants from the House floor with supporters in the gallery last Thursday. The resolution declared that 3 had participated in, quote, disorderly behavior and, quote, did knowingly and intentionally bring disorder and dishonor to the House of Representatives. Now, naturally, one needs to ask, unfortunately in America, we have this weird obsession with civility and with decorum in our legislative bodies. I got no problem with people. If you ever watch those clips of Parliament where they're utterly disrespecting each other, I feel like we need a little bit of that energy. Republican Representative Bud Hulsey, Gino Bolso, and Andrew Farmer filed their resolutions. They successfully requested Monday that the House expedite the process and vote on the resolutions Thursday. Despite support from the Republican supermajority, their requests sparked outrage among supporters watching in the gallery. Their loud jeers led House Speaker Cameron Sexton to demand that they be removed by state troopers. Also during the turmoil, several lawmakers engaged in a confrontation on the House floor. Jones later accused another member of stealing his phone and trying to, quote, incite a riot with his fellow members. Gonna take a look at that in a second. Sexton deemed Jones out of order and cut off Jones's microphone. Hundreds of protesters packed the Capitol last week, calling out for the Republican-led State House to pass gun control measures in response to the Nashville school shooting that resulted in the deaths of 6 people. As the chants echoed throughout the Capitol, Jones, Johnson, and Pearson approached the front of the House chamber with a bullhorn. As the three shared the bullhorn and cheered on the crowd, Sexton, a Republican, quickly called for a recess. He later vowed the three would face consequences. Meanwhile, House Minority Leader Karen Camper described their actions as good trouble, a reference to the late U.S. Representative John Lewis's guiding principle. By Monday, Sexton confirmed that the 3 lawmakers had been stripped of their committee assignments and said more punishments could be on the way. A few hours later, House Republican Caucus Chairman Jeremy Faison referred to Jones as the, quote, former representative during the evening session. Pearson and Jones are both freshman lawmakers. Johnson has served in the House since 2019. All 3 have been highly critical of the Republican supermajority. Jones was temporarily banned from the Tennessee state capitol in 2019 after throwing a cup of liquid at former House Speaker Glenn Casada probably, and other lawmakers while protesting the bust of Confederate General Nathan Bedford Forrest inside the Capitol. Expelling lawmakers is an extraordinary action inside the Tennessee Capitol. Just 2 other House members have ever been ousted from the chamber since the Civil War. So, let's take a look at the video really quickly.
Are trying to expel 3 Democrats from the GOP-led House for their role in a recent gun control protest at the state capitol. It's a super rare move that resulted in a heated confrontation between lawmakers. 3 Republicans filed resolutions against Democrats Gloria Johnson, Justin Jones, and Justin Pearson, claiming they participated in disorderly behavior when they led chants from the House floor last Thursday. They chanted as hundreds of protesters packed the Capitol to call on the Tennessee State House to pass gun control measures in response to the Nashville school shooting. The 3 Democrats were stripped of their committee assignments following the protest. Lawmakers will vote on Thursday on the resolutions to remove them.
So, yeah. So when we talk about, when we say that the Republican Party is steeped in fascism, this is what we're referring to. The idea that you would expel members of your House of Representatives for participating in protest says a lot about your deference to public opinion and public outcries. Clearly, the House-led or the Republican-led House in Tennessee is taking extraordinary steps to essentially, and let's be honest here, expel opinions they find and they have deemed to be unappealing to them. These people led protests and spoke out against the current status quo in Tennessee in regards to gun control. They are not just, these are not representatives who are not backed by the populace. These are not representatives speaking out of turn. These are representatives speaking among and for the hundreds of people that showed up to that state capitol today, being escorted out by state troopers. This is in absolutely no complicated terms, utter undemocratic, tyrannical control. That's all it really is. I struggle to find the words, mainly because all of my life, I have heard from Republican lawmakers, Republican pundits, Republican voters, every single time. All my 30 years, I have heard about how Democrats, about how the left, about how people of my political ideology would, in a heartbeat, be ready to silence and remove people with conservative values. And yet, have we ever seen that? Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz, all of these guys who aided, abetted, and egged on the January 6th rioters, do any of them have any of them been expelled? Would any of them be expelled by their own party? No. The only tyrannical force in this country is the Republican Party. The only fascist movement in this country is the Republican Party's MAGA movement. They can say, the GOP can say that MAGA is separate from them, that the party is, you have your Mitch McConnells trying to be center right. But this is the monster that they have created for all of us to deal with. We now have a woman like Marjorie Taylor Greene, a unfathomably unintelligent, uncreative, deplorable person running as what is she, like second or third in command behind the Speaker of the House of the United States, House of Representatives. When we say that this movement is not even just growing, it is beginning to target and excise dissension. This is the first ball to drop. Do you think that a Republican-led House of Representatives in DC, do you think, federally, do you think they're above doing this? Do you think they're incapable or unwilling to expel members of the Democratic Party? I don't think so. We'll see how this plays in Tennessee. But if they don't face any repercussions, if this is not something that we see, the broader Republican Party push back against, which as far as I've seen, we haven't, then we have a real problem. We have a party that is beginning to toy with the idea of expelling dissension. They can bitch, they can moan, they can whine, they can complain about Trump being indicted for crimes he committed. But it is their party that is expelling members of the opposition for raising their voice in opposition. There's really no other, there's almost no other way for me to characterize this.
Day that turned into a historic night in Nashville that continues unfolding at this hour, all centering on that deadly school shooting 1 week ago today in Nashville. A lone gunman killed 6 people, including 3 9-year-olds. And here is what you need to know tonight from our coverage. First, leading Republican lawmakers filed resolutions to expel 3 Democrats. Representative Gloria Johnson of Knoxville is among those 3. That follows a move late this afternoon by the House Speaker to strip those lawmakers of any committee assignment. House Speaker Cameron Sexton publicly condemned the...
And is it surprising, not to play id pull a bit, but yeah, the Tennessee GOP expelling a woman and 2 black House of Representative members, representatives in the House. Shocking. I know. The party of, the party of misogyny, the party of racism.
The Speaker promising consequences. Representative Johnson says she takes responsibility for breaking that rule last week, but calls the move to expel her extreme.
So if you want to expel members for caring about third grade kids, I guess you can go ahead and do that.
Turmoil rolled into the evening session with the speaker ordering vocal protesters out of the gallery, and Twitter video shown here showing the frustrations boiling over on the floor. A confrontation between Knox County Republican Justin Lafferty and Nashville Democrat Justin Jones. He recorded that moment on his phone. One of the largest protests in recent history centered on renewed calls for Nashville lawmakers to pass tighter restrictions on guns. It's a direct contrast to a string of bills so far this session supported by the...
Also, I believe, keep in mind, I believe it's 30% of the population of the entire U.S. population owns guns. And so keep in mind, this is a 70-30 issue. And the 30% of this is winning the day, mainly because there's an entire industry backing them up. But keep that in mind. Whenever people talk about democracy, talk about freedom, all the rest of the stuff that they want to bring up with the Second Amendment, keep in mind, we are defending 30% of this country in their pursuit to strip all safety measures from our society when it comes to guns. Juxtaposed with 70% of the country wanting some regulations. Just keep in mind, it's never been 70% want a ban or Democrats want a ban or any of this. It just isn't. It's never been part of the conversation. But it's always been an opposition to just basic regulations.
The Republican majority to loosen gun restrictions. Also today, surrounded by leading lawmakers, Tennessee Governor Bill Lee unveiling a new budget plan devoting $200 million in additional money to improving school security across the state. The plan must pass both the House and Senate. You can read more about what it means for private and public schools right now at
And will it pass? Who knows? Will Republicans pass funding for schools? I don't know. They don't really seem to be interested. This is actually the only time in which there seems to be any interest in funding schools, is when it's arming schools, when it's arming teachers, when it's doing all the rest of this stuff. That's probably the biggest, that kind of tells you where their priorities are. Because when it's buying books, when it's paying teachers well, when it's getting supplies for those schools, Republicans have no fucking interest in funding schools. They just don't. They never have. But only in the case where, oh, hey, we could buy some body armor, we could buy some guns, we could probably get a good deal from manufacturers, help them make a little bit of money on the side too, by the way. That's the only time they're interested in passing broad funding for school. It's fucking disgusting. It's goddamn disgusting. And I know I've been like really the last couple of days has been stop it. Has been a lot of gun stuff, but it is I want to communicate to people the conversation around guns. The reason why we focus so much on them is because it's the broadest and fastest way for us to find a solution to a lot of this stuff. Because a lot of times Republicans will say it's the mental health, right? But do they ever follow up on what they want for that? And you can say, oh, it's mental health that's causing all of these shootings. Well, that's correct. Most of the people who do them are mentally ill. But what are Republicans proposing that we put into place, that we create to solve that problem? Fuck all. I've never seen once a real effort from the Republican Party to pass any kind of comprehensive mental health care legislation aimed at offering those kinds of services to everyday Americans. It just doesn't happen. I'm still waiting to see what it is. Where it's going to come from. Does the Republican Party support Medicare for all? Fuck no. They think it's communist. They think it's socialist. That's more than enough for them to hate it. So when we talk about what's the issue or what the solutions are, they're only interested in every solution that isn't around guns, which means they're not interested in an answer that they don't like, which means not only are they dishonest, they're not even coming to the conversation in good faith. They've already made the decision that it can't be the guns. So we must talk about everything else, and everything else we don't have an answer for. So keep that in mind. Christ above. Anyway, let's see. Oh yeah, that's right. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at a video that I found while kind of looking for some of the Tennessee stuff. It's a video about the diverse nature of the gun owners that we have in the United States, which I think is a good topic to always, to always talk about. I try to talk a lot about when I say, when I think of gun owners, when I think of gun advocates, I'm not, advocates probably leans more right wing, but owners, on the other hand, not as much as you would think. I believe there was a study. I don't know if I can find it. No, I don't know what to really look for. But I heard about a study recently of the kind of demographic differences. Maybe I can find it. If it comes up like first, gun ownership, demographics. Let's take a look. Demographics of gun ownership. Ooh, Pew Research. This is 2017. Yeah, I'm okay with these numbers. We're okay. Okay, let's see. Many adults who don't currently own a gun could see themselves owning one in the future. 69% do not currently. Yeah, 69%, 30% with a little split in terms of. Ow, shit, my shoulder. In terms of ownership. Handgun 72, rifle 62, shotgun 54. Among owners who own only one gun. Oh wait, saying people each. Among all gun owners. Okay. Yeah, vast majority is a handgun. On both, or specifically on people who only own one gun. That makes sense. Is most common among men and whites. Shocking that. Adult men 30 to 11. All adults 30 to 11, men 39 to 5. Jesus. Net gun in household 42. Don't own a gun, but someone else in their household owns one. Oh, okay, cool. Ages 18 to 29, 27. Okay, so we see actually a weird increase, or at the very least a plateau at 50 in terms of ownership. A lot of it's white people. Keep in mind, guns are also expensive. You'd kind of expect to see more white people owning guns than anybody else, just on the basis of being able to afford that. Some college is actually the most. High school and high school or less is just below by 3 points. Bachelor's is the one that drops the most. Northeast, let's see, Northeast and the West are the lowest numbers, with the Midwest and the South being the highest proportion, with rural being a lot of the guns, urban and suburban bringing up the rear on that one. Ownership far more common among Republicans and Democrats. Not shocking there. Independents, though, 36. That's actually a pretty decent number. Republican leaning is 44, so you can probably assume that that's a bit of that number. And Democrat leaning 20. That's honestly probably where I would fit it, is Dem leaning. Many non-gun owners are open to owning a gun in the future. That makes sense. Protecting top list of reasons. For protection, all gun owners 67. Urban 71, suburban 71, rural 62. For hunting, obviously that's going to go down. It's going to go up for rural. Sporting, yeah, okay. Most gun owners own multiple guns. This is true. Makes sense. About half adults say they grew up in gun owning. Yep, that makes sense. We live in the United States. Among those who grew up with guns, men are far more likely than women to have participated in certain gun-related activities when they were young. I don't use airsoft guns such as paintball. All right, yeah, oh yes, certainly. Anyway, my point in bringing this up is that, there's a variation. Sometimes we get, I think, a stereotypical picture of a gun owner that isn't necessarily fully accurate. It's why I really try to stress responsible gun owners as opposed to just saying gun owners, or I won't say conservatives as a synonym for saying gun owners. That's also those are two different groups. Those groups are not one to one there. But anyway, let's take a look.
I've seen all kinds of gun crimes, and I can tell you, Brian Kemp's new law is dangerous.
American politics in 2022.
All of it is in Big Jim Lane.
More than 100 Republican ads, 20 from Dems, all centered around guns, giving the perception the issue of guns is divided exclusively along red and blue lines. But in a country with 120 guns for every 100 people, there are liberals who are pro-gun and conservatives who support restrictions. We spoke with 6 gun owners across America, and for each of them, the idea of America's gun culture means something different. Approximately 77 million adults own a gun in the United States. 6 in 10 say their reason for getting one is self-protection. Like Will, who asked to be identified only by his first name. His interest in
My dude, you're on camera. Okay.
firearms was renewed during the pandemic.
Oh my God.
It was
Look at this. A responsible owner. This is what I mean. Like,
there were a lot of, not in the local area, but just surrounding areas. There were a lot of home break-ins and things like that. Car break-ins. So I thought, might be a good time, especially with my kids getting older. So I wanted to.
Also, keep in mind, I want everyone to also understand that when people say, "Oh, I bought it for protection," there were, there's a lot of break-ins or this or that or the other. Keep in mind that there is a correlative element to that, in the sense that a lot of local news tends to focus on these break-in stories, on these home defense stories, on just a lot of these sensationalized stories, a lot of these stories that just sound like movies. They sound like action movies and stuff like that. So keep in mind, there is an element to, I think, people being kind of pushed into this defensive posture by media and this is the problem with our media right now, that's funded by ads and isn't funded by giving you information. A lot of news these days is a bit of news and a bit of entertainment, and it's usually a bit of a mix of both. When any news broadcaster focuses on a recent crime, not crime wave, but a recent break-in story, somebody has to defend their home or whatever from whatever, right? That's a sensational and interesting story. People are going to want to watch that. People are going to click on the article. People might read it online. And that drives traffic, which drives revenue. So unfortunately, our news delivering systems, our news delivering organizations are financially motivated to produce more and more sensational news. A good kind of, if you want like a cinematic example of this, if you've ever seen Nightcrawler, the movie with Jake Gyllenhaal, understand that that's kind of the sensational aspect that the news is trying to get that attention for. Obviously it's a fictional movie, but those sorts of people who go out and try to film crashes and stuff like that, there is that element that, those guys exist and news broadcasters want that sort of coverage. It's sensational, it's interesting, it gets eyes, it's stuff like that. It's the profit motive behind delivering the news. And I don't know how we get away from that. People need to be paid to deliver the news, but that is an element of, I think, radicalization in these terms. It's, how we inform people about the society they live in is going to paint how they view that society, I suppose. But
protect my family, protect my house.
There will be people who will see these ARs and will say, these are the things that are destroying America. What do you sort of think when you hear that kind of stuff?
I'm sympathetic to that.
Is that what that means, Subsonic?
Especially for
I appreciate
people who have
kind words.
That
what language is that?
Or that tragedy. I don't take my ARs out.
I don't know what language that is.
It. My understanding in Maryland, there's no rule against open carry for rifles. But that doesn't mean I should just go around and flaunt it and carry it or let people know, hey, I have it.
That's called being cringe.
For me.
In some states, it's legal to openly carry weapons, including rifles, and people do.
I appreciate
and
that.
In places like Missouri, folks say it's a way of
Sorry
life.
for the
Weapons, guns is
all the shit going on over there in Russia and Ukraine. It's a real struggle for the people of Russia and the people of Ukraine. Kind of nobody's winning in this scenario.
Out here.
Charles Kay is a recently retired Army officer who's training to be a gunsmith.
A lot of people need to go hunt in order to put food on the table.
Totally fair.
They grew up
hunting.
You know, 2, 3, not 2, 3.
Keep in mind, if you're hunting,
5, 6,
I got no problem with you hunting.
Are learning how to shoot, learning gun safety from their parents, and who else.
Gun safety, the actual.
That's how they grew up. So yeah, a lot of people have guns around here. That's the culture.
While Charles is skeptical of new gun laws, there are some that he supports.
You live out here, yeah.
I wouldn't be opposed to making everything 21. I'm not opposed to
that would make sense.
Gun transactions, having to go through a federal.
Can we get 1080p, please? Thank you.
Dealer of some sort.
Never gone hunting.
Can I get a repeat? I was checking the thing.
I wouldn't be opposed to making everything 21. I'm not opposed to.
I actually don't really hear that one that often. I don't. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I don't know if
all gun transactions, having to go through a federal firearm licensed dealer of some sort.
Never gone hunting.
At the very least, I feel like an FFL should have to, if these are like private person to private person, they should have to facilitate that. Like an FFL just has to facilitate the transfer and stuff.
I enjoy shooting as a hobby. I enjoy shooting paper targets.
James, who also requested his last name not be used,
dude, you're on camera.
Sport.
People are gonna recognize you.
As the son of a retired law enforcement officer,
what does he have? What is that? An M4 Benelli
and
an
emphatic supporter
is that
of
a
gun
M4?
rights. But he believes the right to gun ownership must be balanced with responsibility.
A lot of people ask me as soon as they realize that I'm a gun owner, like, oh man, what if somebody breaks into your house? Are you going to use that? And I, sincerely looking deep down into that truthful mirror, I don't think I would. I think it would be very much a matter of call the police. I think a lot of people will get on.
Yeah, if you like wake up any officer, by the way, a lot of the people who play John Wick in their head and are like, oh, I hear a rattle downstairs, I get my gun and I go fucking car stands through the fucking, a lot of people who do that are in their minds narrativizing and falling for the Hollywoodification of guns and self-defense. Any police officer, go talk to any cop. You know what they're going to tell you if you ask them, what should I do in a scenario where I hear stuff going on downstairs, in the middle of the night? You know what they're going to tell you? What the police are going to tell you? They're going to tell you two things. One, close your door, lock it. If you feel you need to, barricade it. But otherwise, close your door, call the police, barricade it if you need to, and grab some kind of weapon. If that's the gun in the room you're in, fine. But if you're not a gun owner, grab, fucking whatever you got in the house. We have like that right there. That's a keyblade. If I hear some like rustling, if we had it downstairs, if we were in that scenario, you lock this door, maybe you barricade it if you feel you need to, and if somebody rolls up on you, I bash them with the fucking keyblade like they're a heartless. So, and any police officer who tell you that, they will tell you every time, do not engage with an intruder because it's dangerous. You are at a higher risk of being harmed or accidentally harming somebody in your family that maybe came home later than you would have expected. There are hundreds of stories of people going downstairs, they fire on somebody who they think is intruding, and it's their kids, it's their dad, it's their whatever. Because people make mistakes while handling firearms and are too hasty because they're too ready to fucking do the whole thing, right? But any of them, go. I genuinely mean this. Go talk to an actual police officer. This is what they'll tell you. Don't engage. Call the police and don't engage.
Rights. And I think it would be more helpful for us to also consider the responsibilities attached to that.
Views about guns can vary widely depending on where you are. For example, I'm here right now in suburban Baltimore, and the views here are very different than the views in a place like where I am now, in downtown Baltimore, a place where the murder rate this year is outpacing that of last year.
Ugh.
I realized it was really a stress reliever. Like, I was having kids, like, really coming in there,
Baltimore,
wanting to fight everyone.
Alex Long, a community activist who's lost family members to gun violence, has decided to open a gym to try to lure kids off the streets and away from guns.
And by the time they left, they literally would come to me and like, man, if I wasn't doing this, I'd probably get locked up.
In a city with more than 240 homicides so far this year, guns here are easy to get.
13, 14-year-olds that will have access, and it's delivered. Like I say, guys will come around here with cars and trucks full of firearms, and the purpose is target our youth. Where are our leaders?
And keep in mind, I also want to be really, really clear. Stuff like that's illegal. The cops need to be better about that. But that doesn't really factor into what we talk about in terms of gun control. Because a lot of the arguments from people who are staunch advocates of the Second Amendment will say, oh, well, you know, why is it, you know, if there's these guys running around giving out firearms, you know, the local citizenry needs to be able to arm themselves to counter that. To which I can't help but ask, why the fuck am I buying a gun and not just telling the police, hey, it's this car, this license plate, this street, whatever? Where the fuck are the police in this scenario? We already have a group of people that are supposed to go and deal with that situation. It's called police. I don't know if police just aren't doing their jobs, can't do their jobs. I don't know what the specific answer in that case is. But certainly, there's the part of this where these guys are getting them. They're getting them from somewhere, right? They're getting these guns. Usually, they're being bought legally by some random person. You know, they're being bought by somebody and then distributed to people who shouldn't have them. But if there's no permitting, if there's no process to go through to own these firearms, you've made the process of distributing firearms to people who shouldn't have them incredibly easy. If anything, you want to tighten those regulations, tighten those laws to counteract the people who are reselling these illegally. But anyway.
To tackle this issue, because these are our kids. These aren't some war-torn country or a bunch of soldiers that have been heavily trained. These are our kids, and we turned our back on them. So that's our fault. You know, so our kids, they felt...
Also, I don't think I really need to say this, but there's a reason why Baltimore is a fucking mess. And a lot of that is due to income inequality. It's due to a lack of stable wages and a lack of being able to find stable and what's the word I'm looking for? And stable and meaningful work in terms of your wages. You know, if you're living in communities that are starved for resources, that are starved for opportunities in terms of building businesses, in terms of finding, you know, gainful employment, all the rest of these things, people will inevitably turn to whichever avenue is left for them. If your options when you turn 16 are work at 7-Eleven for $10 an hour, or go sell drugs for, let's say, let's be generous and say $13 an hour. And also you're not paying taxes on any of that. What are you going to pick? You're going to pick the drugs. Because it doesn't matter if you've got rent to pay, if you've got a mortgage to pay, if you've got food that you need to eat, if you have to survive at all, you're going to do whatever the fuck it is that you need to do to survive. That means selling drugs. If that means if that means killing somebody in the process of selling those drugs, you're going to do it because you need somewhere to sleep. You need something to eat. You need somewhere to lay your head at night. And if the only avenue you have to meet those basic human needs are illegal, you're going to pick the illegal one. Because breaking the law and maybe getting caught is better than not and living in destitution. Not to mention that gangs and such offer people community, offer people shelter, offer people a role to play in life.
Alone. They feel like they have to do it on their own. And sadly, in a lot of cases, I have to agree with them.
Alex and his partner are both gun owners, and rather than have the government focus on gun restrictions, he'd like to see more funding for programs like his that offer support for those in trouble.
Absolutely.
He's working to try to prevent the worst.
We got to get back to giving them real support. And it's not that 9-to-5 support. You may have a young man call you 3 o'clock in the morning and say, I want to kill somebody. You got to be open up to actually hear him or her and then work with them so they now hear them and understand that this ain't what I really want to do.
And is that the kind of calls? Those are the kind of calls you get?
Absolutely.
The laws around guns changed dramatically this summer when the Supreme Court struck down a New York state law that restricted a person's right to conceal carry a firearm, making it far easier now to do so. In places like Maryland, it's meant an increase in those wanting to conceal carry.
Since the Supreme Court ruling, an unbelievable.
And keep in mind, I want everyone to realize that these people aren't picking up firearms because of a desire to exercise their Second Amendment right. They're not. They're picking them up because of these societal choices that we've made that has led to them living in communities that are desperate and violent. Understand, their desire for guns is not a stance. Is not is the primary position for them. It's a response. They are responding to their environment. That is why when people say, "Oh, well, bad guys can get guns," and all the rest of the stuff, right? All the rest of the self-defense argument bullshit. Do you know why there are bad guys with guns? Because we don't have any regulatory bodies keeping track of all of this stuff. We don't have police that are tracking this stuff. We don't have communities that are thriving. Notice a lot of this gang activity happens in poor areas. There are so many factors as to why any neighborhood gets to the point where people need to pick up a gun, need to own a firearm for their safety. But they didn't own a firearm simply because they wanted to, or it was the first order. It was a response. And if we solve the primary reason as to what they are responding to, that's how we solve this problem. And it's why bad guys getting guns isn't an argument for not passing gun control. People still kill people. We have laws to prevent that and punish that. But it doesn't mean that because there are still people in the wake of those laws that murder people, that the laws are useless.
Explosion of people coming to get gun training.
Catherine Harrison is the president of the Maryland 10th Cavalry Gun Club, where they do more than just fire guns. The club roots its history in the Buffalo Soldier and puts a premium on educating its members about current firearm legislation.
Wow,
Here in the state of Maryland, you have to have 16 hours of training.
Yep.
So I think most of these instructors have gone from maybe averaging 60 students a month to over 200 plus. What's most important to me, I think, is that gun owners provide or get some level of education to use their firearms, not just go out and buy one and then take it and bring it home, put it on the dresser.
Michelle Douglas, who founded the gun club, has owned a gun for 16 years.
There's a lot of guns in America, too. Is it reasonable to think that we're going to...
You're never going to get rid of the guns off the street.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I don't know where this argument comes from.
That ship has sailed.
Not wrong. Not wrong.
It's too late. There's too many guns out here on the street, and there's too many people that don't follow the rules. So lift the restrictions on people like me so we can defend our homes.
Her concern is that more gun laws would impact the wrong people. Her.
I'm not the one that the government needs to put restrictions on. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I adhere to the laws.
No. So, and this is one of those things where, yeah, you'll slip through the cracks, no problem then. This is like the reason why I've advocated for these specific legislations that I have, that I have before, is because this woman would pass all of those without a moment's thought. She just would. There isn't anything stopping her. I haven't proposed anything above. I think the most controversial I've ever said as a legislation is caliber restrictions. But even then, nobody can argue, I need X or Y caliber. You don't need that. It's plain and obvious. You don't need an AR-15 to defend your home. It's not. You don't need, if you want to have a pistol caliber carbine, sure, you can have that. That's within 9mm. But in terms of having the full breadth of options, I don't think you need it outside of the range. There just isn't a use case for it. And people will say like, oh, well, I'm law abiding. Why can't I own this or that? And it simply comes down to, what do you need it for? There's a lot of things you're not allowed to own because we've decided as a society that it's not valuable to allow people to own certain things. Grenades is a good example. It's just, not everyone needs everything. You don't need everything. I think it's fine to say you've got a set number of guns that you can have, or not even a set number, it's not even type. They're just things that we can regulate, small things. That's all I want. I want rather small changes that aren't really going to affect a lot of people. I think they'll affect the people they need to, which is the point. Again, it's a net. I just want more people caught in that net.
Laws are made to keep honest person honest. It does nothing for the criminals. They don't care.
From Missouri to Maryland, some Americans believe lawmakers are protecting their right to have a gun. Others believe they're letting us down. Michelle worries about politicians stoking divisions, and like many firearms users, wants to be prepared to defend herself in case she's confronted with the violence they speak of so frequently.
One of the things that happens is like Republicans are pro-guns and Democrats are coming for your guns. Now, that may not be true, but that's kind of where...
That's the narrative.
Well, with an ex-president advocating civil violence and disobedience...
Bro, I love this lady. She's great.
My concern is, do I have enough bullets at home to defend my castle?
You don't. I hate to say it. So I've heard that with other people where, it's, conservatives, in kind of the more right-wing side of the 2A community consistently do like I got to defend my home, defend from the government, blah, blah, blah. You ain't doing that. There isn't a gun that's going to stop any of that. That right there is the delusion that honestly really annoys the shit out of me. Mainly because you're not going to challenge the US military might with your fucking Sig Sauer. I'm sorry. It's just, it's not gonna happen. You're not gonna get it done with an AR-15. You're not gonna get it done with an M4. You're not gonna get it done with any of this stuff. If the U.S. ever took that turn into a tyranny, where civil war and all of that, first of all, is it's wild. It's wildly unrealistic, and also I think people have an idea that it's going to play out in a way that I don't think we're going to see. But if it was ever a government versus its people, understand, the government has drones. They will just take a look at Iraq and you tell me how well people did with rocks and AK-47s. Because that's what we're looking at. Lots of Democrats have guns now. Okay. Yeah, everybody owns guns from both sides. Everybody does. Guns are not a I think we looked at I think these are, what were those, 2017 numbers? What was the independent number? I want to say it was like 40 something. It's in history. Demographics, here we go. Yeah, where is it? Where's it by party? Yeah. 41 Republican, 16 Democrat, and 36 independent. A large group of gun owners are independent. Large group. Second largest. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of nuance with the gun debate. I just get, and I said this I think yesterday, I just get frustrated from people who always want to argue against two things that aren't happening. One is a full-on 100% ban on guns. It's not happening. And two, that their guns are going to be used meaningfully to fight the government. Those two things are, at least in my view, one is delusional. The second one is delusional. Let's be honest about that. The first one is, I think, convenient and shows a lack of interest in the nuance of a discussion that I constantly hear from 2A supporters. Is, I constantly have to hear that liberals don't know anything about guns, but they never want to have an honest conversation about it. Almost ever. It's always gaslighting. It's always mischaracterization and being dishonest about the actual topic at hand. And that really upsets me as a, I don't want to say as a gun owner. I guess partially as a gun owner. It's irritating when people be dishonest in defense of something that you're supportive of, I guess. It gets irritating. It gets very, very irritating. The thing that they tell, at the end of all YouTube videos where they tell you to click on one of these things to watch more videos. Yeah, I've been meaning to film one of those. So that's what I was doing. I was just setting it up to film one.